Okay, hi. I'm Adam Gordon. I run this webinar series. We do one probably once every week to 2 weeks. It's called Talent Talk. It's a rich and varied program of talent acquisition related content, and we've got all sorts of different people who come and take part. I've got 3 brilliant guests on this week, and the subject is building a company, starting a new business in talent acquisition, which is a very interesting and dynamic subject in 2018. So I'm just going to ask Lauryn to do a quick introduction, Maury to do a quick introduction, Bill to do a quick introduction, and then Bill to talk first about what is it that is the kind of checklist of things that Bill is looking at when evaluating a new business and its potential. So, Lauryn.
Hello. Hi. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm Lauryn Sargent. I'm a co-founder at Stories Incorporated. We're a services company. We've been completely bootstrapped. We've been focused on recruitment marketing and employer branding, that market in particular, for the last 2.5 years. But our business has been around for 6. So I can talk a lot about iterating on your business and how to assess when things are working or not. But yeah, and Stories Inc. creates recruitment marketing content based on employee stories.
Brilliant. Maury.
I'm Maury Hanigan. I'm CEO of SparcStart. We are a 5-year-old startup. I don't feel like we're a startup anymore, but technically I guess we are. And unlike Lauryn being a service business, we are a SaaS platform. We help employers get their jobs noticed by bringing their job descriptions to life with video of hiring managers and infographics and things that make job descriptions interesting and noticeable. Like Lauryn, we are bootstrapped. I've stolen the acronym that we are a rabbit, a real actual business building interesting technology. We have a real business. We have clients who pay us real money and really use our product. And that's a real point of pride. But building a business, this is not the first one I've built in this space. So I've got lots of experience and delighted to talk about it.
I've never heard of a rabbit before in that context, but I like it. Real actual business, building interesting technology. Good.
I want to get a little rabbit lapel pin and kind of wear that proudly.
Yeah, okay, great. One thing I would just quickly say about Bill is it's currently 10 past midnight where he is. Bill,
Thanks,
what are you doing in Australia? And just give us a quick who you are, and then let's talk about what you're looking for when you're evaluating companies.
And he's frozen.
Oh, he really is. Okay. Hold on. He's now on mute as well. Right, is he? No. Okay. He'll come back. He's probably talking. We're all frozen because we're listening intently. Okay. So I'm going to just start with talking about a few of the things that I think are important. This is Candidate ID it's sort of the second business. It's sort of the second business that I've created in this space. So I set up a business in 2009 called Social Media Search, which was a recruitment research business. And the reason I set it up was because at the time, LinkedIn and other social networks were becoming really, making the world more transparent, and they were allowing organizations to be able to identify people they might want to hire. But of course, most of them were unable to use social networks in a way that was like meaningful. And that's kind of why I created that. But then, of course, coming into about 2014, 2015, everybody was pretty much able to do that. And although we still did have customers who we still have today, there was something entirely different that emerged as being a reason to create a different business. And that was because we were finding all these people, giving our customers lists of all these people. And then we were asking them, look, what you are asking us for more software engineers in the USA, more salespeople in Western Europe. What are you doing with those people? And the answer was nothing much. So it became really obvious we needed to start creating a nurturing service. And then we identified that there was no real technology that was going to enable us to do that. So separately, we created a technology business. So it's kind of the second time I've done it as well. But both times I've done it, there was a market requirement that nobody else was really serving. And I think that's a bit similar to Maury's story, but we'll come back to that. Bill, you're there now again? Are you? Yeah.
He's muted.
It looks like your mic.
You're muted. See if I can unmute you.
Can we type? Here, let's.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure. He's in Australia.
Right, so while he's doing technical things,
yeah. Tell us about.
Let me jump on.
Yeah.
The important thing about your story, Adam, is first of all you understood it from the employer standpoint or from your customer standpoint. One of the things that I see going on, particularly in our space with recruiting and talent acquisition, is so many startups are started by people who got frustrated trying to find a job and went, oh, wouldn't it be great if companies just did this? And they have no understanding of the employer side of the desk. And the thing that drives me nuts, quite honestly, is they often, in the US at least, they have no understanding that there's an entire body of legislation known as employment law. And it's a real thing, and it matters. And you have to account to it. And they also have no sense of scale. When I find people who tell me about this great business idea and they don't know what ATS stands for, I'm like, you really need to understand the customer side of it. So where I see things that are really successful is somebody who really gets the space. They understand recruiters who have rec loads of 30 and 40 recs, which I don't understand how they do that, but they do. And they understand scale. We've got clients that have 4 million applicants a year. Some of them are hiring more than 100,000 people a year. You've got to be able to scale it. If you're going to go big business, you can do small business as well, but that's a whole different thing. So, Adam, what you did is you were already in the market. You saw a need from your customer's standpoint, not, gee, wouldn't it be great for me as the candidate if this happened? And you created a real business. And that's kind of my first litmus test. Does the person doing this understand the market, or do they have a great idea? They were unable to sell it and thought, oh, we'll sell it to HR because they'll buy anything. They're not very sophisticated. Kiss of death.
So there is a kind of juxtaposition to that, which occasionally wins, which is because somebody doesn't know anything about the market they're serving. They're not coming in with any predefined restrictive, thinking, limiting beliefs. And so there are, especially in your city, there have been a few people who have launched businesses who literally have had no real world experience in recruiting. And
we've had a couple of people win the lottery too. When you want to look at who's going to make it, you really need to look at, do you have any expertise to build on?
Well, you know what's really interesting? One of the mistakes that I made. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm not sure I agree with that. If startups and different products have been in our marketplace, it probably sits at about 50-50. And there's significant kind of it's not always domain expertise. And when we think about it, we see a lot of startups going on and being successful, which start with maybe people straight out of university who are kicking off with new ideas and gaining sector experience. So I think it's really balanced, and there are other factors which are more important than industry knowledge.
Well, can you talk through, Bill? Just talk through while we've got you until we lose you again, which we probably will at some point. Let's go through. Can you go through your checklist when you're working with investors and they're asking you to evaluate companies? What are the 4 kind of criteria? There's 4 things that you look at.
There's 4, and they kind of have broader subheadings, settings, but to talk through. The first one is that there's a real product there. So the first one is that there's a product, it is solving a need, which is an actual need and an actual problem, that it's really solving that problem. And do we think it's solving a problem which is sufficiently big to those in the market that they'd be willing to pay for a solution to do that? So that's the first thing. The second thing we're looking at then is the scale of that problem, whether it's a domestic, a local, a global problem, if it's an enterprise problem, if it's an SME problem. So the scalable size of that market that we see the technology as looking to address. The third thing then is that there's an actual plan for execution. There's something behind it that says, yes, there's a real plan. It's not just a case of I'm looking for $1 million or I'm looking for 2 million, and we're going to generate 10 million in sales next year because we want to generate 10 million in sales next year, or we're going to have a valuation of the business of 3 million because we want it to be worth 3 million. That there's an actual real plan there, and that normally involves things like headcount, market, location, how you're going to win business, particularly in our sector, whether you are one-sided or a two-sided market. So when you're trying to get, when we look at platforms, you're trying to get candidates and hirers, or are you addressing one side of that problem? And particularly if you're addressing something from a candidate perspective, you're addressing a problem that candidates will actually pay for. If they're addressing, the answer to that is no, or the answer is that's not a product, or it's a point solution, or the scale isn't there, or the plan isn't really there. And then the fourth thing is really the people, and in particular, I'm looking at founders as to how well they will listen to advice or direction, how well they know their product. And really, I think if you're going to be handing over somebody's money, it's never mine. I don't have enough of that. It's somebody else's money. But if I'm going to be making an investor recommendation, if that was my money, would I give it to you? So it's really those areas and lots of subsections of that where we reject or put a big cross against a lot of investors, a lot of products.
Okay, so in terms of there's a real product there, so the first one, is there a real product there? My understanding from some investors, for example, that I know is they kind of don't really care if there's a real product there or if it's just basically a storyboard. Is that wrong?
You want to see that there's a real product there, and that might be generally depending what stage you're looking for capital. I should probably say that. And there's a big difference between approaching an angel where people for their own money, and that can be personal. That's quite often kind of family and friends rounds and so on. And when you're approaching an institutional investor or a corporate investor, an institutional investor is primarily going to be looking to see a minimum viable product and to see it solving a problem and to see some people using it in anger. They may or may not be paying money for it at that point. Hopefully they are. But there's some kind of product there.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning then. So
as an angel taking a punt, if you're basically saying, I've got this idea and can you give me 50 grand, and I take a punt on enough ideas and hope some of them fall right.
Yeah. Okay. So just going back to the beginning, right? If somebody wants to start a business in recruitment today, so Maury said I just explained the two businesses that I've created, and Maury's point was that I started with the employer first, and came at it from that perspective. How do you think? I said in the green room before we pressed live, the world doesn't need another accountancy recruitment agency, right? So what are the best ways to identify gaps? Well, what are the best ways to identify? No, it doesn't. No. What are the best ways to identify gaps and identify, things that you might want to go about creating? It's a question for anybody.
Yeah. Well, the way that we did it, which isn't rocket science, but it's a lot of work, is we talked to our target customer market, and iterated on a minimal viable product. So we showed constantly what we were working on, and would you buy this? And you wouldn't. Okay, would you buy it if X, Y, Z? And we did that with tons of people before we figured out what our business was. And tons of people, again, the people being potential buyers. So people who were, in our market, our target market has shifted as a result of those conversations years ago, and we're still having them today. but I'd say that's how we identified what we were going to do is talking to who we wanted to sell to and figuring out what their problems were. And I came from talent acquisition, and just what we were talking about earlier, I found one of the earliest mistakes I made is trying to sell to myself because I felt like I understand, recruiters so well. I was one for 8 years. I was so wonderful. I know all their problems. Yeah. And that was a real mistake. Because I approached it in the way that I would buy from me, and I kind of glossed over the step of trying to really understand my market, thinking that I knew better because I used to, I did that for 8 years. So I think it is important to have industry experience. I think there's something about getting off your ego about it and starting at the ground level of just talking to potential buyers and figuring out some of the pains they're having. And that minimal viable product idea was so painful for me as someone that, and still today, like anything that I put out there, I kind of overthink, and I think I want to take, every opportunity I want to be like I'm perfectly prepared. And it's really embarrassing to show something that's half baked and ask someone, would you buy this? It looks terrible and it's awful, and you've spent no time and money on it. But the point is to do all that before you set out to build a business thinking one thing, I used to be a recruiter, so I know the problem so well. And now it's, 6 months later and all this investment of time and money you've spent to something that people aren't going to buy. Excuse me.
I would buy that. So I would buy that. So everyone would buy that is definitely a banana skin.
And I know how to sell it because I used to do it. I could sell to myself, that was a mistake. Yeah. That was a bad idea.
And I think that's the biggest place where people fail is they don't really have a go-to-market strategy. They think, oh my God, I'm in love with this product. So everybody's just going to want it. And they don't, the daunting thing for anybody in this business right now is there's supposedly 1,900 talent acquisition startups out there. How does the buyer ever get through that? I'm so glad I'm not a buyer. And so much of it isn't practical or real and the really good stuff, because there is wonderful stuff out there. But how do you ever find it? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you get above the clutter? We talk to people that are just overwhelmed with people trying to sell them.
Well, and I think for the businesses that need to make it, one of the best advice that I've got, which I still don't take all the time, and I try to, is the worst thing that can happen to you is that you're moderately successful, because you can't give up on your idea and you think that because we've had early success, it must be, and so then you're building a business on this early success and it never gets to where it needs to be, and that's really hard because you think this is a thing. So many times I thought, this is totally going to work. We have a great client. They love us. They love what we're doing. But then it didn't port over anywhere else, And so that's advice I try to take to to step back and say, great, let's be cautiously optimistic, but you need to give up if it's not, I know it depends on your goals, but even moderately successful, when you say there's 19,000, right, other companies out there, you need to be solving a problem that lots of people have.
I think it's 1,900. The walking
did you say 1,900? Oh, still
1,900, I think. Yeah.
Okay, that's still a lot, but not 19,000.
A few points I think are quite important to address. One is when we're looking at it from an investor point of view, if there's not multiple people trying to solve the problem, it's not a problem. They might be trying to solve it in lots of different ways, and that's where when I have people talking to me and saying we are the only person trying to solve this or the only person doing this, my immediate question is, well, is that a real problem? It's not a case of somebody suddenly came up with it. Now, I can accept I'm the only person trying to solve this problem in this way or with this technology, but generally speaking, the problem, the problem is there. There's a lot of HR and talent acquisition startups. There's a lot of company hiring a lot of people, and there's a lot of people to be hired in this world. So it's a very large addressable market. I think the bigger issue that I see, speaking to people from an investment perspective, is getting overexcited about the fact that they can get users without understanding that they're never going to get paying users. You have a launch of a product, and you have a beta, and lots of people who test it and try it, and lots of those people who tested it and try it are friendly to you, so are very positive about what you're doing and saying, yeah, great, you're going to change the world, and you're going to be the next great thing. And you kind of get a harsh truth when you say to them, okay, will you pay $1,000 a month license or $2,000 a month? And they're kind of going, yeah, when I said it was good, I didn't mean it was necessarily that good or that big a problem.
My budget doesn't allow.
Yeah. Well, I don't have budget for it at the moment.
So here's the here's a big question on that, because I look at Talent Tech Lab's ecosystem, and I go, right, that is very, very crowded. And I look at every company that's on there and go, none of them are doing the same thing that I'm doing. However, they are all in competition for the attention of the buyer. Yeah. They're in competition we're in competition for budget. Yeah. So,
but Adam, how many buyers are there?
Yeah, there's a lot, but there's a huge.
How big is the global market of people getting hired and candidates getting connected with people? You know, I think we get bogged down we look at sectors and say, well, if there's 100 companies doing it, 200 companies, 500 companies, 1,000 companies doing it. I think more of the issue, if you want to look at talent tech ecosystem, is the number of different point solutions.
Yeah.
And considering what are people actually looking for when you've got lots and lots of point solutions, there's only likely to be one exit route. Speaking of an investor, which is you're going to be bought by a proprietary software, unless you're going to be a lifestyle business. So if you're going to exit financially to be interesting, then and you're a point solution, you're solving a bit of a problem when somebody's buying you because you're a chatbot or a video product or whatever it is, and they're buying you to bring into a CRM or into an ATS or into a bigger ecosystem. The other thing, and you and I have had this conversation a lot of times, is the battle is where the budget is in terms of what people have budget for. So they're more likely to have a budget for example, a CRM than a point solution, or similar, or what we're seeing more and more is have budget for a CRM and an ATS and wanting to have one single platform. So I think when we're looking at it as investors, we're kind of looking at where's going to be the eventual destination of this? Where is this going to go? Is it going to build into something bigger from a point, which some products do? They come in, we look at it and say, okay, once we've got this piece, we can get the next piece and we can build another piece to it, another piece to it, another piece to it, till we have some kind of substantive software. So I think that's the biggest issue, is we've got lots of point solutions, and the battle for the buyer is which point solution solves my problem, or which type of point solution, but I don't necessarily have budget for that.
So let's talk. We've talked about investors quite a lot here, and Maury, that's something that you mentioned at the beginning. You said, you've bootstrapped your business. I don't want you to go into all the secret strategy, but what's been your kind of reason for not going and raising investment? Because I know your pedigree, and you absolutely could have gone and done that. So what's been your sort of motivation for not doing that until now?
There are a couple things. Part of it is when you're bootstrapped and you're spending your own money, boy, does it keep you focused. You really look at every dollar and say, where's the return coming here? But there's also this piece of honesty of, are people willing to pay you money for this? To Bill's point, you can go out there and you can just build traction and get exposure and do all these wonderful, lovely things that don't translate to business at all. But I get payroll to make every single month. I better have revenue coming in every month. So I darn well better have some real product that somebody really wants to pay money for. There's real value there. And there's a piece, would I love more money to spend? Of course I would. We'd all have more money to spend. I look back in the early days of this business and, kind of to Lauryn's early point that you learn all the time. And I'm not a novice at this. I've been in the business a long time. I've built and run other businesses. I still would have spent a lot of money poorly. there were sort of fundamental issues that we needed to solve. Our messaging needed to be clarified. I could have gone out there and blown my wad and blown my opportunity to get in front of a lot of people before I was really ready. And there's real value. Now, I'll admit, I'm frustrated that we're 5 years out. We're not bigger than we are. It's taken me a long time to attract and hire the people I've wanted to, because I haven't been able to afford the people I've wanted to. It's a long slog. But today I'm spending money smarter than I would have even 3 years ago. So there's an honesty to it. The other piece that, is great is I get to stay true to my vision. I don't have anybody telling me, oh, you've got to do this. We get asked all the time, what's on your product roadmap? And people are flabbergasted when I say nothing. And that's very purposeful, because I don't want to, we've got a really clean, simple, intuitive product that you don't need a whole lot of training. Now, it's a little misleading. We do add features and things, but we're not being pushed to just come out with the new thing and have a new announcement and a new sort of thing. We're not being forced to spend money that we're not ready to. I get to build this business that stays very true to a vision and stays very much on point. And we're getting there and we're doing it. And I talk to a lot of people who are just pulled in so many directions and feel, lots of pressure to go spend and scale quickly. They ratchet up their overhead, and then they need to do more rounds, which means they get diluted. And before, I think I know somebody right now who's just lost control of her company because she needed to do another round and someone else is being brought in to run it. I may take this thing straight into the ground, but by Jove, I'm going to run it until we get there. Fail or win. It'll be the vision.
So the challenge is so I've done the same as you've done, and you're right. It keeps you focused on what you spend money on, what you don't spend money on, and this will be the first year that we've not done a really cheap Christmas party.
Bravo!
Congrats to you.
Yeah, it'll be the first. Yeah, the first year there's actually meat on the plate.
Not a BYO pasta.
Yeah, but I definitely agree. If somebody goes and gives you $5 million, then there's a pressure to spend it quickly, because you got to show you got to show ROI and increased revenue fast, and that pressurizes you into making decisions, into maybe hiring people that you might not hire, for example, otherwise. And so I completely agree with that. But you've done another slightly contrarian thing, which is, as far as I understand, you are the sole founder of your business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's another golden do not do it on your own that you've gone and kind of broken. So what's been your do you think that caused you problems, or do you think that's been made you better?
Arguing with myself is enough harassment. Just ask my husband. It's like, you don't want to deal with me. I have an advantage. I was a computer science major as an undergrad, and I don't read or write code anymore. Whoops. It sort of helps. And I have one of the world's most wonderful CTOs, which allows me to not, to have the best of both worlds. Now, I have, when I started this business, I had like Lauryn, I put together a group of potential customers and I bounced ideas off them. I've put together an advisory board, because you just need people to sober you up and go, Maury, get over it, or get over that kind of thing. And in truth, I did a friends and family round. Now, my investors chipped in $5,000 each. This isn't big money. But some of it is to be accountable to other people. Both my sisters have got money in my business, and there are going to be some really uncomfortable Thanksgivings and Christmases if I lose that money. So, there's a little bit of that, oh boy, keep the solid hand in your back pushing you forward, because there's pressure here to do it. So when you're a solo founder, you can drink your own Kool-Aid way too much. So I've surrounded myself with people, and even my advisory board, I've asked them, please do not be polite to me. I don't want an advisory board meeting where you tell me I'm wonderful. I know that. Like, tell me all the things I'm doing wrong. Because that's really helpful.
And hats off to you, Maury, because I tried to do it by myself for about 8 months, and I'm a highly motivated person, and it was very hard. So I found a co-founder who's, beyond words, amazing. But without him, I would have quit. It's just so hard, and especially like my friends and family were so sick of hearing about my challenges. It's like, enough, okay, we get it. You're trying to start a business, and so that's great. You could do it by yourself. Again, my experience was it was really hard to do that. And even though I have a founder, I have found it, and I've put together an unofficial advisory board. I'm constantly trying to seek guidance from others, and it's hard because people don't understand your business. And to Bill's point about when he was talking about what he looks for in a company that invests, and kind of one of those criteria were coachable founders. I thought to myself, I had like a great reaction to that and a negative reaction to that. And the negative reaction was like, oh, right. Because someone else is telling they're investing in you, and you're having to consider, of course, the direction that you're going, which might not always be customer centric. It might be investor centric. But the other side of me is like, sometimes great. Sometimes I want someone to tell me what to do. So I think, I think it's, congrats to you, Mark, because I think that's really tough.
So I
think there's a couple of factors there. One is some people can't work with other people, and as a result, they have to work alone. I'd include myself in that. I don't have a product, but I paddle my canoe. I'm not answerable to anyone. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's a terrible thing. Mm-hmm. But it's like anyone in any role. It's kind of what makes things work. What makes things work for you. But I think the other point in terms of whether you take money, you don't take money, there's a number of factors. One is what your actual exit strategy is in the beginning. So, what road are you on? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years? Of having an indication for that. That will always change. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer.
Maury,
but it's dictated.
Sorry, Maury's semi nodding at that as if it's not something she's never thought about. As if.
But the other piece is, I mean,
I've noticed you thought about that all the time.
Yeah, and Bill's absolutely right. But there's another piece, guys. Be realistic. This isn't my first business. I was in a position to self-fund it. I could write six-figure checks. If you're starting out, you don't have I have the luxury. I was sitting on a bunch of cash. So Bill's, absolutely right.
Yeah. And sometimes you see this, if you can still eat and if you have the money, you're not taking the investment. The difference is you're taking the investment of your own cash and dwindling your resources or growing your resources or growing the potential. But I think that there's a really important bit in terms of where revenue, and you equate revenue against what you're going to give away of your business, because ultimately if you're going to take some cash on board, you're going to be giving away some fairly substantive piece of your business to somebody else. In some cases, as Maury said, you're going to be vesting some control in that. It's really the scale, and I think a startup in particular reaches a point. You start looking at your client acquisition and what you need to have in place to deliver in terms of things like customer support and technical engineering. And if you're going to grow at a certain pace according to your sales projections, you're going to need more staff than you have revenue for. And unless you've got deep pockets at that point, I've seen both sides. I've seen organizations who are bootstrapped where they maybe haven't grown at the pace I would have expected because they wanted to hire a salesperson or an engineer or anything else. They've had to go get some more customers and they've had to get revenue before they can grow. Part of understanding what the plan is when we're looking at investment is that you thought, right, okay, one customer equals 2 engineers, or 5 customers equals 2 engineers equals $1 million, and all this kind of great stuff we do when we draw these business plans together. I think the reality is there's no right or wrong in this game. I know some sole traders who took no money and right now are very glad that they didn't, because they don't have to generate, when it's coming to exit point, they can exit with quite a nice lump personally. We kind of retirement and change life money without needing to get multiples of 20s and 30s or 100s or 200s without that pressure. And actually, I see that more, and I'm not addressing this to anyone on the panel, it may sound like this. I see this actually with more mature, more mature founders who maybe have a bit of business experience, a bit of cash, where they're actually going, if there's an exit, it's going to be a personal exit with a lump sum that's going to be nice for me, rather than I want to build a business that's going to be 200 million or 300 million or 500 million, when actually I'm going to end up with maybe not even one of those million when we exit.
So listen,
work too hard founders.
Bill, really quick question for you around. So I mean, I've got to be honest. I can't imagine you being an employee, a co-founder, or anything like that. But you've been there and done all of that. But what you have done, which is remarkable, is you have in 10 years built by far the biggest global recruitment events, let's call it movement. And that's involved hundreds and hundreds.
Don't make money though, Adam. You know, I'm not going to be able to sell it to anyone. It's not. I think the key point when you're talking about that is because of the way in which I generate my revenue, network was more important than anything else.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Network had to have lots of different aspects. Whether someone would have given me money to do that would have been quite different in the beginning.
Yeah,
I would have given me the money.
You have created what is a collaboration with hundreds of people all over the world who are working with. There are hundreds of people working with you every single year to make that happen. And although you're not at all the events, you're at 60% of them or something like that. And that's something that you have. I mean, I don't know precisely what you earn, but I know that you earn quite a lot of money from doing things that have come out of doing True as a non-profit making initiative.
Yeah. But I mean, that's just age-old marketing, really. You know, I think you make a decision when you are networking and when you don't have one product. I'm a service business, so it's very different to being a product business. I'm in a different game to all three of you, really. When you're a service business and you're networking, you make a decision about, do I want to build a network of revenue earners, i.e. customers, candidates, according to whatever business you're in, and do I want to make money from my network because of my network? My decision fairly early on, because I didn't have a product, was to generate revenue because of my network, not from my network. And that's a different approach. So these are the kind of questions that we have. You know, and I've seen product companies do that quite well. If I look at people like People Geeks,
well, that's also a recruitment agency. It's also a recruitment agency model, isn't it? To an extent.
Not really, because I think recruitment agencies are the worst people to see anyone as anything other than candidates or clients, or a waste of time. From a networking point.
That's true.
By the way, I'm saying that from the point of view of having been a manager that said, why are we talking to this person? Why are we talking to this candidate?
Yeah.
Why are we wasting our time on it? Why are we doing this stuff?
Yeah, we're not we're not a citizens advice bureau. Stop talking to them.
Etc. Whereas actually, you know, in the modern age, if you are a citizens advice bureau, you may end up making the most money. You may end up having the most friends. So.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah,
so
as someone that comes from agency too, I never thought of it that way.
A friend of mine, a guy called Joe Mullins, is based in Florida, and he runs a recruitment business called the Mullins Group, which is a specialist company working in medical devices, quite senior level kind of appointments. Their entire focus is on providing advice, being a source of the best advice you can get for how to get ahead in your career for people in the medical devices industry. And they spend zero marketing time on employers, but the employers come to them because they know that they have, you know, an audience and they have a community. And that's kind of like the way that they've got, of the 30 people in their business, 10 of them are focused on nothing but content. It's a remarkable model.
It's how the Muse got started, really. The Muse is all about giving advice to people and, and then selling the traffic. Yep, it's an angel. So, Adam, let me turn the tables on you. What's been your success? How did you get Candidate ID? You also run a business in this space. You're not off the firing line.
Yeah. So I was a recruitment consultant for 3 years, and I was pretty decent at doing it, but I didn't really like talking to candidates. So I moved into recruitment marketing. I was like king of the franking machine when I was a recruitment consultant. I was just like, right, mail shots, bang, bang, bang. Let's see what works and what doesn't work. But the marketing aspect of recruitment was the bit that, really was of most interest to me. And I think it was just, I've got to be honest. I think so. I'll tell the truth about this. The reason I had no intention of ever starting my own business. My dad was chief executive of a stock market listed brewery in the UK, and I fully intended to live my life entirely the same way as my dad. But my mum became really ill, and she left the house to me in Glasgow after she died. And I decided that and she hadn't done all the things she wanted to do with it. And I decided I was going to keep her house. I just made the decision, I'm going to keep her house. 5 minutes later, I quit my job. 3 months later, when I walked out the door, I had just worked out what I was going to do. And it was going to help businesses use LinkedIn. And that's all it was going to do. So I deliberately pushed myself into a situation for emotional reasons. And I had no interest in earlier interest in running my own business, but I think it was a pretty, looking back now, it's a pretty good thing that I did. But a big realization happened in around about 2015 when it became apparent that building a service company that's based on quite a unique mindset and unique ideas is absolutely not scalable at all. And I would continue for the rest of my career, if I was going to do that, to earn a decent living from doing it. But I might as well have gone and worked for somebody else. Yeah. So, and probably earned a better living by going to work for somebody else, because what I'd built was not something that was really scalable in the way that I was doing it. And so the whole thing around technology was had become very, very very fascinating to me around how technology was changing the way that humans interact with each other. So I just knew I was watching Bloomberg Technology every single day, and I just knew I wanted to do something that was in technology, and I wanted to change the business. And yeah, I mean, we haven't scaled now it's a technology business. We haven't scaled it the way that I would have wanted to have scaled it yet. However, we're building a pretty strong market position, and our messaging's all kind of right now. And 2019 is going to be a really, really good year. And we won the recruitment startup competition at Unleashed last week.
Congrats!
Which was when you get your market telling you yes, what you're doing is right. That's really, really satisfying, because when you're just telling people yourselves this is brilliant, that's only got so much of a shelf life. But what I'm talking about here, I was going to then move on to talking to Lauryn about, and that is that somebody was at my house on Sunday. My kid had a party, and one of the other kids' dads was just launching his own digital marketing agency, basically. And he was asking me for some, I've been doing it for 9 years. So he was asking me, what are the things you think I should be thinking about? And I said, you've got 3 options. One is you keep it small and you charge yourself at quite a strong rate and you make quite decent money out of doing that. Number 2, you hire brilliant people and you try and make yourself dispensable as soon as possible, and make sure you've got lots of long-term contracts and you can build some value in a business by that. Number 3, look for a way that you can commoditize this and you can use technology to make it all scalable. And that's the 3 options you have. And so I'm interested to know, Lauryn, what in creating a service business, which is what you've done, what are your thoughts around the kind of different ways that you could go about building the business?
Yeah, I'd say that that's a pretty good 1, 2, 3. And we're still figuring out what's next for us. I mean, we've built a rabbit business as well, Maury, that, and we've always been profitable. Now, to what are we paying ourselves to be profitable? Is that sustainable? Early years is one thing, but it's grown to something that's, an actual business that we've created jobs and we're paying people actual wages and not, relying on free interns and things like that.
That is, by the way, that is an incredible milestone. Thanks. And that is an absolutely brilliant thing that you are creating jobs, because you're in an expanding world. So that's not just displacement either. That's not just, I've hired that person from that company, they're now working for me. You're actually helping expand an industry,
yes,
which is creating jobs.
And I'm very proud of that. But I also I'm really proud of what we have built, and that it's an actual business. But it's challenging. Like, as you were saying, coming to the realization, Adam, of we could do this for the rest of my life, which I always wanted to. I always wanted to do this for the rest of my life. But, how big can it get when you don't have, in our case, we don't have long-term contracts. We do project-based work. We have a lot of returning customers, like 9 out of 10 of our customers return. And we work with some customers for years, which is wonderful, but we don't have anybody locked in. So that thought of, hiring in advance or knowing the cash that's coming in, every year we start at zero. So I'd say that's it. My partner comes from, developed a product, had raised money, on a small scale, and we deliberately decided to build this type of business. So knowing these risks, and so yeah, I don't know if I'm really answering your question, and that you're kind of 1, 2, 3 paths sound about right to me. And if you build a services business, there is, we are at the point where I want to make myself dispensable. But it's very hard for me to get out of it. I mean, once you've been involved in all of it, and you want to see it a certain way, and those are things I'm working on, just trying to get out myself and train others, and it's hard. So I don't know if that really answers your question.
Maury, in your last business, I think you did basically option 2 in that, which was because you built a business that was bigger than you, and you had some good kind of longer term contracts, and it was marketing communications business, wasn't it, in the graduate recruitment area?
Yeah, actually, I've run a couple the biggest business I built was a consulting firm that advised companies on campus recruiting strategies. And, I look at the Deloittes of the world and the other big consulting firms and really admire. It's hard to find really smart people that are really good enough to run their own business, but are willing to work for you. And that's hard. Yeah. It's really hard. Yeah. If they're good enough to really manage it and do it at that level, then oftentimes they do it on their own. Scaling that is really hard. You can make a lot of money at it, if you can find your niche. And clearly we were a niche because we just consulted on really organizational design of campus recruiting programs. And we knew it well, and we worked for 200 of the Fortune 500 at one point or another. But like Lauryn's saying, once you came in and you did a whole strategy review and you helped them reorganize and put together a plan, if you did it well, they didn't need you again for a long time. So, it's like, great, we did this for ExxonMobil, and they're not going to need us again until enough things change, which is years away. So yeah, you either got to charge a ton of money so you make it while you get it, or have some kind of repeat product. And it's, why I got into the SaaS business and got to a technology product is I don't go away on vacation and lose all my income. That was a hard thing when you're generating income. You look at, I take a week's vacation. What does that mean in gross revenue? My expenses don't stop, but I stop generating it. Yeah, that's a hard one. Products are easier, but they take more to get going.
But there is a challenge. I think you're doing. Sorry, Bill.
Adam, I think it's very hard for founders to let go of the baby.
Yeah.
We don't see that actually any different in any management tradition. There's a very strong sense of I'm the only person who can deal with this, particularly when it's your own money as well. Of I'm the only person to deal with this, and there's a certain amount of human nature in that. It's very difficult. That's why it's sometimes useful to have. And you would Adam would certainly be familiar with those conversations. Sometimes useful to have some controversial voices around saying you need to just let them get on with that and get yourself out of it and get yourself out of the way, and be working on building this business, not selling this business or whatever it is. And I think this is the toughest thing in business is the emotional attachment to that business, because you built it and nurtured it, and it's your baby. I know as an advisor, quite often when I'm giving people feedback on product, it's kind of like I've come in their house and told them their baby's ugly.
It is one of the benefits. It's one of the benefits. I mean, Scott and I are actually we're really quite different when it comes to our sort of thought processes, and he's quite glass half empty, and I'm quite glass half full. And that's really good, because I'm not a wild risk taker, but I'm a lot more of a risk taker than Scott is, and so I kind of have to justify. If I want to spend money on something, I have to justify it to him first.
Sometimes, whereas a partnership, he will stop you taking some risks, and you might make him take some, and I see that firsthand, really.
Yeah.
And it's my job to point you both sometimes and try and point you in that direction, which what good advisors should do. But I think that's what that's really what we've got to understand, that growth of a business comes, and this is any business. This doesn't matter whether you're a manager or a director or an owner or a founder. Growth of your business comes from letting go. There's a limited amount to what one person can do. There's a limited amount to what one person should. When I said right at the top of the show, and I was saying, that last quadrant of the investor question is the person. That's part of the consideration I'm making. Is this person ever going to let this business go and grow in the way that it needs to, or are they going to seek to control it in many ways, then stifle future potential?
Yeah. Listen, those
reasons.
Last few minutes, I want to focus on one topic we haven't really covered yet, which is, so you've built your business, you've got some team, you've got some product or a distinct service. How do you go about building customers in 2018 or in 2019? What's the best way to go about building your customers?
I'll jump in here, which is bizarre given all the technology and all the rest of it. We're finding the most successful thing is meeting people face to face. We're at conferences, and part of this is that the buyer is so bombarded with emails and ads and all the rest of it. Sometimes it's that personal connection. Referrals obviously are wonderful. And in truth, I'll admit our big business strategy is FOMO. I very fortunately have a couple of direct competitors who have wonderful products. And I've gotten them all together. I've actually met them one at a time. And I've said, guys, let's just build this business. In 5 years, we'll sharpen our elbows and we'll fight each other for market share. But right now, we just need to have everybody doing video enhanced job descriptions or enhanced job descriptions somehow. So I'll help you, you help me, where our products are slightly different for different size markets. But that's part of it, trying to get to a point where every buyer goes, oh, all my direct competitors have found some point solution. I don't care if it's my point solution right now or somebody else's point solution, but I need to step up and create more of the demand just out of straight FOMO. Stay tuned. I'll tell you if it works.
No, I think in the world that you're in, I think in the world that you're in, that would be fine. And I see it with chatbots as well. I see chatbot companies doing webinars together and talking on stage together and stuff like that. So I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure who I would do that with if I was going to do it, but I'm going to think about that. I'll try and do a lot of collaboration with people that are doing things that are slightly different, but I'm not sure. But Lauryn, what do you reckon?
Yeah, this is very tactical. I've been doing, focused on sales for 6 years, and finding new ways has been interesting. And I read a lot and try to try to think of new things. For me, and again, this is fairly tactical. I think what we see working is doing more events where we're sharing our knowledge. So what it used to be is that I would try to get in-person meetings, direct sales, which is great if you can get it. But I've exhausted a lot of like, I'm in your city, let's meet up. And actually a lot of our prospects are kind of like, that's a little intimidating to meet one-on-one with the vendor and you come to the office. So the past quarter, I've experimented with putting on free breakfast, having some kind of programming. I did with Rally Recruitment Marketing. They did a training and I delivered an hour. And I felt like that was the best way to meet people face to face in a way that isn't intimidating. It's on their terms. They're coming to learn something. And we have a lot to share. We have a lot of knowledge. We have, from doing this for a while. So we have no problem teaching something of how to get a great story, the best way to repurpose a story. Those are all things that we can teach. So for us, it's great to get in front of an audience. We're not going to be making money through events. It's really just that's part of our business development strategy for 2019. So I've tried, we're still doing a lot of the things that we've seen work in terms of email marketing. I read a book in 2012 called Predictable Revenue that we still use. And I don't know if you guys have read it. I love it. I mean, I love anything those Aaron Ross and Jason Lemkin do, even though I'm not in SaaS. I take almost everything they say. They address problems that I've had, like kind of like that thought of finding people that can speak to your challenges, whether that's like your board member or reading something. But anyway, so I'm still continuing doing the basics that I know work. I also got really great advice from an advisor, which is saying that sometimes when you're get a little bit of success, the idea is to, reinvest and change things and move to the next level. But sometimes you should just double down on what's working.
Get your successes.
Right. Like, and just whatever got you there, keep doing the basic blocking and tackling as opposed to doing something totally different with, the money that you've earned. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of that by the things that I know are working for business development and also experimenting with events, which has worked out the past, quarter or so. Does that make sense? Is that too tactical?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But one thing I would just quickly add to that is I think you've created a great business when you, as the founder, are not the person selling the business.
I know. I'm working on that. We've hired a salesperson, so yeah.
I'm working on that. I think you've created a great business when the founders are not the sales.
I know it.
Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to give you some basic pointers. I'm aware we've only got a couple of minutes. I think the first one is positioning. Mm-hmm. Is positioning. You've got to give people something to actually buy. Yeah. And it's got to be very clear what that product is and what that solution is. So one is positioning, and then brand amplification is what you're doing about it. Network is how big you're building network so that people have the opportunity to buy. And lead generation, the question is whether you want sales and salespeople at all now, or whether you need to really focus on your brand amplification, your lead generation, your lead qualification, and kind of that lead funnel. The other part is channels. There's lots of channels open to you through channel partners or integrations that you may not have thought about that might give you a different route to the traditional door knocking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's really being a bit strategic about it. But I think really having a very clear message and a clear product link between what you do and what the market problem is what's going to get people to identify you and say, yeah, that's my solution.
I couldn't agree more with that. There was at Unleashed last week, there was a Buddhist monk who did the final keynote presentation, and his final slide said, there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And my co-founder, Scott, came over and told me about this, and he said, I think that's quite fitting for where we are. And I said, I absolutely agree. And one of the reasons we've kind of got to a position whereby people are coming and we're getting demo requests every day. The reason we've got to that position is because we've chosen one, as Bill said, kind of market positioning, and we've done the brand application on it, and it's about talent pipelines. And I am every single day, I'm dragging holding myself back from talking about something else that my product is assisting our customers with today. Yes. And I just go, no, stop it. Talent pipelines, nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that focusing has been important, but it's hard too.
It is.
On the message, this message, only this. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's quite boring when you say the same thing over and over and over again, but you can't, I just think you really, really have to. One other really quick one I learned from the guy who runs the MIT School of Entrepreneurship. Came and did a kind of 5-day course in the UK, in Glasgow about a year ago that was on. One other thing was, do not be tempted to go and try and sell to every industry in every country and like forget about it. Choose a beachhead market. So for us, it's been London. That's it. Just talent acquisition people in London. That's all we've done. They talk to each other. You've done a bit of that, Lauryn, as well. There's been a couple of cities that you've really kind of focused on.
Yep.
But don't try, if you're in America, do not try and sell to the whole of America. It's just too, at the beginning, it's just too big. Mm-hmm. Anyway, look, we're over time, but I want to say, look, I think all of you are absolutely brilliant. I learned from all of you, and I've really, really enjoyed this session. There's at least another 3 hours of stuff we could talk about in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Siobhan to book us all back in to do this session again in about 4 months' time.
We can see how everything's changed.
Okay.
Exactly. So big thanks to Lauryn, big thanks to Maury, big thanks to Bill. I am going to say a special thanks to Bill, but that's because it's now 1 o'clock in the morning in Sydney.
Thank you, Bill.
So it's probably, the nightclubs are probably just opening now, Bill. It's time to go out.
Time for bed, mate. I'll catch up with you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye, guys. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.